Hi, Eliana. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Hi, Hannah. Good morning to you. How are you doing on this fine morning?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. The sun's actually shining for once in England, which is pretty good. Very lucky day. How are you?
Feeling great. I just finished my workout at the gym and ready to start another day's work here in sunny Los Angeles.
Fantastic. So obviously, Relativity have been in the news quite recently. Could you just kind of, let everyone know what that's about? I know you've got a new facility and just, discuss
Yeah.
that further.
Yeah, so we've just announced in the news that we will be receiving additional floor space at NASA Stennis Space Center down in Mississippi. We already actually lease an area from NASA for test firing our engines, but this will be an additional huge facility that we can actually start building out. And the idea is to build the factory of the future there. So we will be 3D printing parts there as well, not just here in California, but actually on site. So that makes it a lot easier to either test, fire, and assemble engines, or basically print the rest of the rocket structures and then ship them down to the flight site rather at the Cape.
Okay, brilliant, fantastic. And so just going on to that, I mean, the general discussion that we are going to touch base on would be around gender. And I'm just wondering, have you noticed any differences between traditional manufacturing and obviously additive manufacturing?
Yeah, so bringing gender back to Relativity just for a second. So I actually was the first female engineer hired here at Relativity. I joined when there were very, very few people, and now we've I think we've quadrupled in size since I joined. So that's pretty amazing. But generally speaking, the level of female engineers and technical people is still kind of low. We have pretty good representation in operations, finance, that kind of field. But we tend not to see a lot of women applying. And that is kind of generally the case in general engineering and general manufacturing across the board. So I don't think that we're particularly special. What I think we are special in is we focus on the 3D printing aspect or additive manufacturing. And that's the key topic, I think, of today's discussion is how do gender issues differ in traditional manufacturing versus additive manufacturing, and how additive is actually making a lot of information available to people. It's breaking down barriers. The technology itself is a platform to empower women to actually enter into this industry sector. And that's pretty powerful. So we can explain exactly what that all means. Basically, if I think about my own background from traditional manufacturing, and I'm a metallurgist, old-fashioned steelworks, worked in a steelworks type of place in Rotherham, which is South Yorkshire, just outside of Sheffield. And so I'm very used to that kind of old-fashioned attitude from employers and people like that, saying, steel is kind of like a dirty kind of subject matter that not many females want to get into. But actually that's not true, because if they actually knew what the subject matter was, they'd be really interested in it, and they can actually offer a lot. The difference, I think, in the traditional manufacturing, we'll just take steel making, or it could be nickel alloy or aluminum alloy or titanium alloy, it doesn't really matter. But we'll just take steel making as an example. It's very difficult for an individual, small company, to just start up a steel making works, or in the case of even additive manufacturing, gas atomization works out of nowhere. Steelworks have usually been in place for over 100 years or 70 years or something like that, and they have a great tradition in places not just in UK like Sheffield, Birmingham and so on, but in other places like in the US, in Pittsburgh, Ohio, the so-called Rust Belt, Cleveland area. And so we have a big tradition of that, but it is quite difficult for brand new companies in the traditional field to just open up and suddenly say, hey, I'm going to start smelting or pouring metal. And that almost never happens.
Yeah.
It's very difficult for an individual to buy, whether they're male or female, to buy a 500-ton press and start making, forging ingots. It's almost unheard of. But what I think is different is additive manufacturing as an individual, or especially as a woman, I can go out and buy a Mark Forge printer for like $3,000 or whatever, and I can start making parts. I can make craft parts, I can make toys, I can make anything, I can make widgets, I can make tooling for engineering purposes. And that's, I think, some of the differences between the traditional and the additive. The scale and also the equipment that's available allows more people to join in.
Yeah, I love that you touch base on the fact that it's a platform for women to feel empowered and to actually be empowered as well. It's a really interesting idea that you brought there, but it's not just an idea, it's actually happening right now. And going around all the trade shows, you see there are more and more women each year. They're turning up to these trade shows, and they've come away from just being in the sales section, which usually you find them, but they're actually taking lead. They're building teams, they're having a major play on these massive companies out there, and also with the startups, they are creating new businesses in additive, and it's a really good thing to see finally in manufacturing that additive can be that platform for us women to really leverage ourselves out there. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, exactly. And what they may not even be aware of is there are lots of funding opportunities and government schemes out there that actually are targeting small businesses and women-owned business. Mm-hmm. So that is something to think about when you're talking about diversity. There are lots of government programs that actually encourage that. So whether you're a minority-owned business, a veteran-owned business, a woman-owned business, there are opportunities for you to either get very cheap business loans or to enter into what we call SBIRs, which are funding programs for research and development for government agencies such as DARPA or DOE or DOD and things like that. And to use that opportunity as a platform to increase sales for your company, to get awareness, to get more projects, to do kind of more networking, and actually to make parts. That's a wonderful way to do that.
Yeah, it's really, really good. That's great. So, with regards to women in general, but with particular focus to additive manufacturing. I know we were discussing the other day, Eliana, that sometimes girls can be perceived as bossy in the industry, but we're trying to move away from. It's not a bossiness. It's actually we should encourage natural leadership skills. So, what's your thoughts, on the differences between men and women with regards to leadership and how they're perceived?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. In California, they just passed a law to say that it's kind of like a guideline to encourage more companies to have women on the leadership, especially at C-level, that each board of directors must contain, at least one female, if not more. And so the more that we see women in technical roles and leadership roles and high up technical roles too, the more that more people will be encouraged by that because they become role models. But your question about the attitude that men and women bring to either leadership or technical roles is really interesting. Clearly, there are some biological differences between men and women, but that's not to say that in a technical role or an engineering role, they can't both offer the same thing. They could. You probably take two resumes or CVs, put them side by side, and if you cover up the name, the experiences could be exactly the same. But, what we find is traditionally, employers have always seen risk or been risk averse to hiring women because, like I said, the old fashioned type of attitude, oh, well, I'm afraid that she's going to go off and get babies. That is actually an illegal thing to say. And that's it's actually illegal to discriminate against people like that because you have no idea what people are going to do with their lives. And their biological function should have nothing to do with how they perform their job.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Going on from that with regards to the resumes, I know we were discussing as well, women are less likely to apply for positions. I think it's it's an act of courageousness to read a job spec. And sometimes I feel as women, we want to meet every criteria before we apply for a position, whereas men usually don't want to, just generalize it, but usually men will kind of take about 50% and, they take the courage to apply. I know you've kind of done this previously in some positions as, with regards to the resume. So how did you approach that situation?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I suppose Kensington would be more attuned to that because you actually are recruiting into AM. But we also have been, reviewing resumes that people apply when they apply for positions with us. So we do see the resumes too. So generally speaking, without revealing confidentiality and things like that, what we find is there is a lower percentage of people who apply who are female. It could be that they don't know the opportunity is out there for them. And generally speaking, in an engineering or technical role, the class sizes at universities and colleges are always skewed towards male rather than female. So it's really going back to the high school, to encouraging people to apply. Once they start applying, then they can realize the opportunity is there for them. In terms of resume writing and actually applying for jobs and knowing that jobs are out there, men, again, this is the difference between men and women, do take a more aggressive stance, and they all are typically more willing to take a chance. If they read a job description and they go, well, I only think I have like 30% of what the requirements are, but I'm going to give it a shot because they've got nothing to lose. Whereas women tend to hold back, and they tend to be, I'm going to read this job description and I only have like 5 things here, I might not apply. And that's not an attitude that is going to be a winning attitude in the end. You have to be willing to take a chance. So sometimes it's okay for us to critically look at ourselves too and say, it's okay if we take a chance. You might get 50% of the things there rather than 30%. And then the rest you can either learn on the job, on training, you can supplement with courses, you can network. I myself took a course in additive manufacturing from MIT X Pro, which I found very useful. I highly recommend that. And there are other training programs out there in additive, like such as the course run by the Barnes Group with Purdue University, which is more for kind of like executive. And then there's also I Am Digital, who also have crash courses in additive manufacturing. And so there are lots of things out there to help people. But definitely on the application front, people generally tend to only apply to things that they think they can do 75 or 80% of the things. And maybe 50% is still okay. And if you show guts, tenacity, and the willingness to learn, you can get it.
Yeah, completely agree. Exactly. So with regards to all of this, I know there's a group called Women in 3D Printing. They are very famous and popular at the moment. And obviously their popularity is growing both with women and men. Can you just explain a little bit more about what Women in 3D Printing do and how we can get involved with them?
Yeah, fantastic question. So Women in 3D Printing was started by Nora Toure, who's kind of like a pioneer in this field. And she recognized the need for connecting women through a network. It's a nonprofit organization, by the way. And it started out very small scale, just having happy hours once a month, just to connect people, just to find out what other people are doing. And I was also connected to this network via Lindsay Zindrowski, who's our LA ambassador. And Lindsay also takes the time to organize happy hours all through the LA area, sometimes Long Beach area, sometimes Orange County area. And what we found is it's a great way to connect people, whether they're male or female. They can still come to this happy hour, meet, talk, discuss, find problems, common ground. You know, sometimes we share frustrations, sometimes we share solutions. And sometimes it's a place for people to also find job opportunities if they're trying to break through to additive roles. So on the whole, I'd say you can find Women in 3D Printing kind of meeting at almost every additive conference. There's one at Rapid, there's one at Formnext, there's one at AMUG. And so we also have, thanks to Barbara Hanna from Scient, she's also organizing a kind of a TED Talk, but it's woman-based, and it's all on 3D, so 3D printing. So it's called 3D Talk. So check that out on her website as well.
That's great. That's really good stuff. So what we'll do is we'll include some links, obviously, in this post, so people can, locate all the sources and people that we've mentioned. But yeah, I mean, I can see this going forward. Like we said, additive manufacturing is a great platform for women to be empowered. So have you got anything else that you kind of want to add?
Yeah, it's some of the points that you made are so amazing, because we're in this age where everybody is suddenly very attuned to listening to women's issues, things that affect women's quality of life in the workplace and at home. And we're seeing things like the Women's World Cup is on right now, and it's an amazing tournament. They're really good sports people, athletes. The athleticism is amazing. But what is shocking and unsurprising is the prize money in the Women's World Cup is 7% of the Men's World Cup. And I'm not surprised in that at all. Until the BBC starts showing that on the main channel and not relegating it to BBC4, we'll never break through. So we need to have more representation. We need to support women in all kinds of areas, not just professional sport, but in also manufacturing. And additive manufacturing is a great way to do that.
Definitely. Couldn't agree more. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Eliana. It was great catching up with you again. And it was also great seeing you at Rapid as well.
Yes, amazing. Yeah, let's try and catch up again at the next conference.
Definitely. I'll definitely catch you there. But have a great rest of your day, and thank you for your time. And yeah, we'll hopefully do another session in about a few months' time.
Okay, great.
Perfect.
See you soon.
All right, bye.
Bye.